Thank you very much for having me here today. It's a great honor to be with you. So as the web industry has been maturing, we've seen the job of web developer branching out to more specialized titles such as UX developer, front-end, back-end, web architect, etc. With this split, the responsibility during the build phase of websites are also divided. And there are times where this divide creates challenges within the development team. So today we'll be looking at how we are rising up to the challenges to create a more collaborative Drupal workflow for the dev team. Come on, yep. So we'll start a little bit about me. My name is Vishal Sahody. I'm a senior UX developer at EY Digital with about 15 years of working experience across multiple CMS technologies and platforms. I was lucky enough to double in the likes of OS Commerce, Magento, WordPress, Drupal, and a lot of custom CMS built along those years. We've been spending 2 years here in Canberra with the team to optimize the build phase. Before I called Australia home, I was living on a tiny island in the Indian Ocean called Mauritius. So why are we talking today? In the course of the last couple of years, we've been working on multiple Drupal projects with varying complexity. And from that experience, we've identified some challenges. And today we'll be talking on how we're leaning on simple agile principles and a lot of dedication from the team to create a more effective workflow. So what we'll be looking at is first we'll go through the traditional flow and check out the challenges we had there. We'll also touch on how we've improved it, and while doing that, we'll check out some case studies. So let's get cracking. It is critical to understand the whole show is actually run by people. So naturally, the first step for us was to identify the key stakeholders. In a typical web project, you have your customer, the project manager, the designer, front-end developer, the back-end developer, a tester, and some server guys who would set it up. While they all play important roles, these were the three groups of people who were directly involved in the improvement process. The designer, because they were asked to do a little bit more than just designing. The front-end developer, because they were asked to get out of their comfort zone and double into Drupal a little bit more. The backend developer, because, well, they were asked to trust the front-end developers a little bit more. So what's that traditional approach? Let's map it out and see where things got stuck. No matter how you're running projects, you pretty much go through something like that. You would have a kickoff meeting, you do research, you'd have an IA created from which the designer would build a design validated by the customer, and we normally go through a prototype build phase, which is also validated by the customer, after which we build the website, and it's done, go through pre-live and then live. While the initial and final stage of the project seem to go smoothly, we've seen after the prototype was built and validated, we saw a significant slowdown with the backend team when they started implementing the assets from the prototype build. Before we get any further, let's talk a little bit about what that prototype is for us. To put it simply, prototype is taking the design and converting that to a website, clean CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. The two main functions of that prototype for us is to demonstrate the interactivity of elements. And the other one is to create reusable artifacts, which is used further down the line during the build stage. Why we build them? Well, we strongly believe prototypes are valuable for customer to make informed decision. It is also the first glimpse of the final product, and is very useful to set the correct expectation. It is sometimes much easier to actually show them a working widget rather than explaining it through technical specifications. So the expected flow in an ideal world would be the backend dev would copy the prototype assets to Drupal folders, and Drupal will inherit their styling and functionality as it was working on the prototype. pretty much kind of a plug-and-play thing. But what we discovered is Drupal has its own way of doing things. Drupal was not compatible with the CSS and JavaScript generated from the prototype. By integrating the prototype, there was always that one functionality that required a different approach when building it. In the end, we had to pretty much throw away the prototype, or it was only kept for visual references. The backend developer had to either rebuild the CSS JavaScript and alter the HTML output to match the styling and JavaScript. An unwanted outcome of this was unnecessary inefficiency, and which created frictions within the team. As a matter of fact, that slowed down the whole project timeline when we got to the build stage. So how did we improve from that? The first step was to look at the issues from both sides. At this stage, it was clear that the common pain point was the HTML generated from the prototype and the Drupal build. Since the front-end developer created the prototype from a blank canvas, he was always using the cleanest and simplest HTML construct, and he was building his elements using that. However, the Drupal was doing it in a bit different way. Devs now here, they surely know this. When Drupal outputs HTML, it's not always the simplest structure or build. In order to tackle the problem, we did a couple of trials. The first one was we tested something that we call the boilerplate approach. In that, we kind of created a repository of Drupal HTML elements, which was used during the prototype build. This was quite short-lived because we quickly found out this kind of made the way 90%, but most of the time there was missing elements, and it went back to the previous kind of way of doing things. And creating and maintaining that repository required quite an effort from the team. The second approach we tried was, well, let's build first and then style it. Because you already have the HTML output, so what happens there? Well, that actually also didn't work out because it created further delay in the project because you had to get the backend working throughout all the complex stuff and building the system. But also we found out, even though we had a Drupal build, the front-end dev was still copying the stuff across to the prototype environment and styling it and flinging it back. So there was a lot of copy-pasting, and it was never a clean build. So the solution for us was to kind of merge the prototype and build effort. So now, any Drupal build we do is actually doing the Drupal theme from the get-go. Drupal 8 now has enough abstraction with the twig templates and all that, which makes it easy for front-end devs to jump in, and not be alienated with it. With some smart setups in your local environment, we also got the front-end and back-end dev working on the same database, same code base, so everything was just there. There was no more copy-pasting or delaying in that. For us, that was the real game changer. The team dynamics started changing, and we saw a lot more synergy happening. We saw front-enders and back-enders sitting down together and deconstructing the design and coming up with what would be those regions or blocks, or what would be the content types or views that we use on this. They also discussed which template to overwrite and what not to overwrite and why. So using this approach, we were able to break down the build in smaller sprints. Since we were working together, it was quite easy to kind of set small targets. And through this, the whole combined effort was to, bringing the front-enders and back-enders together to solve the business challenges or the technical requirement for the business. That also increased the build. So I wanted to give you a peek on a work in progress right now. this is kind of what we do when we're sitting down together. We got the design, we start thinking, okay, what would happen here? This block would behave like that, or how these elements would be. That exercise actually resulted in coming up with these 3 layouts. We'd say, yes, this is what we do, and we decide on the regions and so forth. So we talk about how we merge the prototype and build effort, but the prototype is still a vital, important element for us in the whole project flow. So we couldn't just jump from design to actually building it. So to tackle that issue, we checked what was the industry recommended prototyping tools out there. For us, we saw there's a number of professional design toolkit that allows you to create rapid prototypes. We picked InVision and Sketch as they checked all the boxes for us. I didn't quite mention how the designers fit in this whole role, but there it is. We got the designer on board to switch from traditional design applications and move to InVision and Sketch. Once they had the design done in Sketch, they could add little interactions, and we used that as the prototype to demonstrate to the customer. A quick case study, we were building a really nice report for ASPl, and using this approach, we were able to kind of quickly demonstrate how the menu would work on a mobile device. So using InVision, the designer, in a matter of hours, kind of pushed this out, and we were able to demonstrate it to the customer. He was really happy with it. He could scroll on it, use it on the mobile device, or like he was like browsing the whole website. From there, he signed off on the mobile menu, and everything was good. So what were the takeaways? After running our Drupal build through this process, we started seeing the timeline shrinking on every project we went through. We were able to identify common elements and we were getting more efficient in building them. Of course, that created a better team synergy. Also, front-end developers started liking Drupal a little bit more. They could, add blocks themselves, and they didn't have to go and write in the HTML markup and stuff like that. And back-end developers started trusting front-end developers a little bit more because they could see that they don't just break stuff; they also make it nice and quick. A positive side effect of InVision and Sketch app. We didn't think about it while implementing it, but we were getting better and more descriptive customer feedback on the design, and it was easy for customers to just quickly jump in and add comments. We were also able to react quicker to it. We were getting notifications each time they were putting it in, and once we published changes, they were just hitting the same link and saying that. InVision made it much easier for front-end dev to get stuff out from the design, like what are the color codes or the dimensions and stuff like that. So it kind of overall improved the whole process. All right. So where do we go from here? Well, we already identified some stuff that we need to improve on after running this process, which is definitely on our to-do list. But on a general note, if there's one thing that jumped out of this exercise, it was that change doesn't happen overnight. It required a lot of dedication from the identified stakeholders and a willingness from the whole team to get to where we are today. So I guess we'll keep on improving together. That's pretty much it. And yeah, if you were in the 2 previous talks from my colleagues, you know that Adelphi Digital is now part of the EY family. And yeah, we're enjoying life with them. Right, questions? Sure.